I'm going to start my recording so we can make this recording shareable after the workshop. Here's our agenda for today. So, oh, I'm sorry, not the agenda. This is what we're going to be talking about, organizational grant program. So what is the OGP program? A lot of you have been grantees for a long time, so you are pretty aware. So a lot of this information will be kind of repeat for those who are returning to the program. For those of you who are new, it's going to be new. So we'll go through it in great detail. And so the organizational grant program, we are basically supporting organizations throughout LA County, all 5 districts, who are providing quality arts services and programming to LA County residents. These are 2-year grants. The grant cycle begins in July of 2025 and will end in June of 2027. The grant is meant to be matched. So that's what we mean when we say cash match required, saying for every dollar of the grant that you receive from this program, you're going to need to make sure you have a matching amount of money in dollars to match that funding. And we'll go through what that means, but just know that there is a cash match required. The grants are meant to provide general operating support. So when we say project-based funding, what that means, when we use the word project, it means general operating support. The funding is meant to boost your capacity. The way that you have to kind of formulate your project is by addressing whatever your biggest need is and formulating a 2-year project that will help you address that need using this funding. We have certain eligibility requirements, and so they're listed here for you all. This is from the guidelines, so you can see it's basically a really simple list. Just to briefly touch on this, in order to be eligible, your organization must be a 501c3 nonprofit or a fiscally sponsored nonprofit with a Model A agreement being used in relationship with your fiscal sponsor. The principal offices of the organization should be in LA County. The primary mission of the organization should be to provide arts programming. 50% of the organization's budget should be dedicated to arts programming and activities. The organization should have a functioning board of directors, and there should be at least 2 years of programming completed at the time of application. So if you're a new nonprofit, you just started doing your work, you should wait another year to apply. If you've been doing this programming for 2 or more years, you should be fine. Virtual does count as programming. I'm going to take a quick sec to say, Anne, if you could please allow all the people in the waiting room to come in, you can admit them. Thank you. Okay, there's organizations that aren't eligible for this program. So these would be folks with primary mission to raise funds and not to do programming would not be eligible. Organizations who are educational institutions like universities, schools, individual artists are not eligible through this program. Any organization that is a basically a 501c3 partner of a city or county department or agency would not be eligible. You might be an organization with a fiscal sponsor, but the agreement you're using is not Model A, it's Model C or a different type of fiscal sponsorship. That would not be eligible. Folks who are doing social service, religious, or welfare types of programming. So basically organizations who are doing some arts programming, but the mission is not specifically arts focused, would not be eligible for this grant. You might be eligible for our sister program, the Community Impact Arts Grant. So you might want to look into that if that sounds like it aligns with the way that you're doing your programming. And then also organizations who are not open to the public would not be eligible for this program. We had another bullet point here that is crossed out that you're seeing at the bottom. It says deficit of 20% or more for 2 years. That is currently suspended, that requirement. So you can ignore that for now in 26-27, the fiscal year 26-27, basically next year when we reopen the application, that requirement will come back. So just note that for the future. So we have some new changes in our guidelines, and so we've listed them here for you as just a quick summary, and we'll go into these as we're going through the workshop. There are changes for all applicants, and then there's a couple of changes just specifically for the arts education folks. So number one, there has been an increase to the organizational grant program allocation. The Board of Supervisors approved this earlier this year, and basically what that means is that we have about $1.15 million more in our total budget. So annually, we can now distribute $5.6 million. Our budget was smaller before, it was 4.5. We're now at 5.6 million. So that's a yay that we're really excited and happy to be able to give you all that news, a little bit more funding for everybody. We've updated the CEI, the Cultural Equity and Inclusion requirements for OGP 3 organizations and we'll go into what that means, but basically the minimum requirement has changed. Rather than a policy and a plan, OGP 3 just needs to provide a policy at the minimum with proof of board adoption. We've also had a change to our, what we just talked about, the renewal of the exception for budget deficits. Again, we renewed this exception. So this will come back in 26-27, but for now, we do not have a eligibility requirement that organizations not have a deficit. And then something that you've probably seen in email recently, we have a new form in our application that has to do with the Levine law. We'll go through this in detail, but know that you're going to see a new form called the Contribution and Agent Declaration Form in the application packet. It's going to be one of the things that you will need to submit with your application. And that'll be for all applicants. For arts education specifically, we've streamlined our questions in that task so that arts education organizations are still providing a summary of what they're doing in or out of school to support youth and youth development through arts education. But there's been some questions that have been removed to streamline that application a little bit. We've also removed a requirement. There used to be a requirement in our guidelines that any arts education that was requesting funding, if they were doing programming out of school, were required to have financial investment from the district or school where they were working. We've removed that to kind of align better with our cultural equity and inclusion values. We knew that that might be a challenge for some organizations, and so we've eliminated that requirement starting this year. We have here on the screen a checklist for you all to support kind of getting ready to apply. So this is a list of all the attachments that you'll need to make sure you've got in place before, or that you have on your computer before you even look at the application. So you can see in the first group, that's SMU Data Arts Profiles and Financials. We've got the Contribution and Agent Declaration Form, which we will go into. That's the newest form in this application. We have the Cultural Data Profiles for the last 3 fiscal years. That's something that you need to make sure you've completed. If you're brand new, you'll need to make sure you've done this, the Cultural Data Profiles. You'll need to make sure you've downloaded the Data Arts OGP Funder Report. You'll need to make sure you've got the copy of your most recent federal 990 form, so your tax forms for the most recent fiscal year. And then if your budget is over $2 million, you'll need to make sure you have your audit for that year. So financial review, I think, is what we call it now. And then we have some cultural equity and inclusion related requirements. You'll need to make sure you have your board adopted statement, policy, or plan regarding your alignment with cultural equity and inclusion. Then you'll also need to make sure you have your proof of board adoption of that statement, policy, or plan. And then lastly, the artistic documentation, at least one, if not two, videos or images, slideshow of images or published materials. We'll talk more about what artistic documentation can look like, but you'll need to make sure you have that ready to go on your computer before you begin the application. And then there's some optional items. You can attach letters of recommendation, reviews, marketing materials. You'll have the ability to attach those. The arts education curriculum sample, for some organizations, it's required. So check the guidelines, make sure if it's required that you attach that. Alrighty, to just go a little bit further into the financial documentation. All financial documents that will be submitted need to be up to date. So they should be the most recent documents, and at the very least, nothing that is later than 2022. So the end year of your tax statement and your OGP funder report cannot have a date that is later than December 2022. So 2021, 2020, those documents we won't be able to use. Everything has to be either 2022, 2023, or 2024.
Oh, shit.
And then for those who are with budgets over 2 million, your financial audit has to be submitted and it should match the same year as your other documents. For those who are fiscally sponsored, you need to make sure you've got your internal financial documentation. Again, we'll go into that, but just know you'll need the 990 for the fiscal sponsor. You'll need your own funder report and then your own internal financial documentation. The way that our program is set up, we use budget categories. So we call them the OGP budget categories. You'll see those on the screen here in this table. It's all based on your most recently submitted OGP funder report, so that when you try to figure out what is my budget category, you're doing this based on your OGP funder report. You'll fall under one of these 4 budget categories, and essentially the way that this works is that our request amounts are based on budget size. And so the smaller the budget, the smaller the request amount will be, because it's a percentage of that budget size. And then as you're growing in budget size, your request will grow with that number. And then at a certain point you get capped. So any organization with budgets over a certain amount will not be able to request more than $250,000. The request formula, the way that it works, it's an algorithm. We've basically put it together with the help of a statistician, and this statistician really, what we asked him to do, the mission was to make sure that we were aligned with our OGP vision and values, which are to support the small and mid-sized organizations in our arts ecosystem as much as possible. So that's what we're kind of trying to prioritize here with the OGP program. A little bit more about the request formula. If you want to take a look at how it works, you can actually go to this webpage here on our website. It's at lacountyarts.org/OGP grant request calculator. You can start here. It's helpful to kind of figure out what will your request amount be. Once you have your funder report and you know what your budget size is for this year, for this most recent fiscal year, you can pop that number in to this box here that says, that has the calculate button next to it. So you're going to pop in that number, the budget size for the most recently completed fiscal year, and you're going to click calculate. And it'll give you underneath your maximum grant request for the 2 years of funding. So that's how we kind of calculate what you can request. And then you formulate your project narrative based on what that amount is. And remember that there is a matching amount that is required. So in this example, if this organization is requesting $40,000, the cost of the project is more like $80,000 or more because of the cash requirement. And we'll talk more about that, but just know that this is the maximum grant request for 2 years, and we really recommend that anybody that's requesting funding request 100% of that amount. Don't divide it into 2 years. Request 100% of this amount so that you are eligible for as much of that amount as possible, knowing that we do not have enough funding in our OGP program allocation to support everybody at 100%. So, for example, this year, everyone received 52% of their allowable request. So they did receive as much as they could. If they requested 100%, that amount was shrunken down to 52% of that amount. So make sure you're eligible for as much as you are able to request. Here's what the OGP funder report looks like. This is the top header of the funder report. I'm showing you this because a lot of times with the newer organizations, there's confusion because a lot of organizations are using the SMU Data Arts website to download funder reports. And so you might get confused and pull a funder report for a different agency. So just make sure when you pull this funder report that it says at the very top, Los Angeles County Department of Arts and Culture, OGP funder report. And then to understand or to figure out what your budget size is, you have to use this number. This is the number. Don't use your 990 total revenue number. It might be wrong. The number here, budget size from your funder report, is what will tell you how much you can request in your project, in your application. So you must do this first. You must finish your data profiles for the last 3 fiscal years, make sure they're done, and that you can download this funder report to get your budget size to begin to figure out how much you can request. This amount, this budget size, is a calculation. It's taking total revenue and taking out any cash endowment or cash reserve funds from that amount. So the number is basically your total revenue minus in-kind or cash endowment contributions. Okay. For those who are not are new to OGP, the way that we create these OGP funder reports is we work with the SMU Data Arts team, the Southern Methodist University Data Arts team. So they are on the East Coast. They work very closely with us to help our applicants to basically put together all of this information into this profile, this cultural data profile. Again, a lot of agencies, a lot of public and private funders work with SMU Data Arts and require applicants to do this, to put their information into this website and then pull a funder report to add to their application. So it's a good idea to get familiar with this. This should be something, if you're very new to this program, you should start here. This can take a little while. The matching up of your accounting information with the way that the questions are asked in the cultural data profile. So definitely make sure you've gotten in there early on. There's been some changes to streamline the dashboard to make it slightly easier for especially the smaller budget organizations to get through these data profiles, but it still can be lengthy if especially if it's a new organization that's never done this before and you're putting in 3 years of data. Definitely ask early or start early and ask them for help. They have a great customer support team that is aware of our application deadlines and will be more than willing to help you to get through this. We don't have access to their dashboard, so we can't support you or troubleshoot on the SMU Data Arts site. So we really depend on their customer service team to help our applicants out. So to get started, if it's your first time, you can actually go to their website and you can watch one of their videos. They have videos specifically about how to get through these cultural data profiles. Or we actually have this year a data arts webinar we will be co-hosting with them on September 12th. So if you're interested, definitely make sure you RSVP for that. If it's your very first time, it might be really helpful. Even if it's not your first time, you're just kind of refreshing your memory on how to go about these data arts profiles. September 12th, we'll have a webinar that they will host on behalf of our agency to support our applicants to get through this. So again, the steps here, putting in data arts, data for the last 3 years into the cultural data profiles on their website. You're completing the balance sheet, and then you're downloading the OGP funder report from their website. They don't send it to us. You download it from them, from their website, and then you attach that document, that PDF, into our application. Here's the information about the webinar that we will be hosting with them. And we have some of this information on our website as well. So if you are interested in joining, we can share the link to this event on our chat. We'll do this. We'll do this probably during the Q&A. We'll put in the RSVP link to attend that workshop. All right. So once you're in our application, you're going to see that one of the main parts of the application is the financials task, where you will submit this OGP funder report. This is what it looks like on the screen. Once you have that PDF, you're going to upload that PDF where it says upload a file. You're going to tell us what the end year of that funder report is. Remember, it can't be anything later than 2022. And then you're going to provide any explanations about the data in that funder report on that same screen. You're going to be explaining basically any dips or spikes in the financials that for over the last 3 years that you think are notable for the reviewers when they're reviewing your financials. If they see a big dip or a big spike, they're going to be wondering what happened there. So making sure to explain that for them. All right. So how are our grant awards calculated? You remember I said your organizational budget size determines your request amount. So it's a percent. The request amount is a percentage of that budget size. It will determine what that amount that you can request is. We take that number, whatever that percentage is, that amount, whatever that amount is, we calculate that, we multiply that number by the score that you'll receive from your panel, from the reviewers that review your applications. That will give us a maximum allowable request, and then everyone's maximum allowable request will be added together, and we'll have one program request amount allocation. And normally it's around 11 million when we add everyone's requests together. Again, we only have 5.6 million, so we do have to shrink everyone's request amount or award amounts down to make sure we can address that amount of money or that amount of requests with the amount of money we actually have. So when you do the math, this is kind of how what it looks like. With this example, we have a budget of $200,000. The request was like 43,000. They got a high score of 98 from the panel. Fundable request was $42,875. Their award was closer to 20,000 because we did have to shrink the award amount to be able to award everyone who would receive an award at the maximum amount possible. So for this past year, we distributed 5.6, it says 5.2 million here, but it should be 5.6 to 238 organizations, 238 grantees this year. They received 52% of their maximum request amount. Just for perspective so that everybody can see how it works. I'll stop here in case there's any questions from chat.
Yes, there are a number of them. Let's see where I should go back to.
If there's any that you've already responded to, Anne, I think you can just skip those. If there's anything you haven't responded to over the chat, just let me know.
Yeah, there are a few.
Okay.
So the first one is, if a 5-year-old 501c3 with 3 projects per year is operating in LA County under a foreign entity but headquartered in another state, does that disqualify them?
Yeah, headquarters have to be in LA County.
Okay. The amount entered in the budget calculator is taken from the most recent 990, is that correct?
No, it's not from the 990. It's from the OGP funder report. Budget size is from the OGP funder report. That's what you calculate. That's what you use to calculate your request amount. Common mistake. Thank you for asking that and for helping me emphasize that point that no, you do not use your 990 to calculate your request amount.
Okay, if we are applying with a fiscal sponsor, would we submit the SMU data profile for our fiscal sponsor or for our organization?
For the organization. So you'll split that amount, those funds out. You have to split them out. You're gonna maybe potentially need some help from SMU Data Arts. They can help you do that. They have their customer service team knows how to help you do that. But yeah, you're gonna be putting in the organization's, not the fiscal sponsors, data into the Data Arts profiles.
Okay. Another one, our art space is a program of a private 501c3 or of a private 501c3 foundation. Can we still apply?
I would need to see financial information. So I think that question's a little too specific. We would have to do probably a one-on-one over the phone, or you can stay for office hours after this webinar and we can talk through it.
Okay, which years are acceptable for audits?
For audit, okay, so audit, all financials, the end year shouldn't be anything later than 2022. So it can have an end year of 2022, 2023, or 2024 for an audit.
There's a question about where do we find all of these forms, which I didn't respond to because I'm guessing it's just everything the forms are all included in the application.
Correct. Yes.
Right.
All of the things that you're going to fill out and attach, it's all on the SurveyMonkey Apply site. It's our grant portal. Everything is done through our grant portal. And all these questions, all this information you're submitting is through that grant portal. So once you're ready to go in there and you have all your attachments, you can start to go in and attach all of this and fill out all the information.
Okay, and then we have some CEI questions. Proof of board adoption of CEI policy. This has always been a part of our mission and vision statement. Do we need to have a proof of policy adoption?
Yes, you still have to have a meeting with your board, have them formally approve a specific statement, policy, or plan, depending on what your requirement is. Figure out what your requirement is, formulate that document, and have them approve it. And then attach the proof of adoption and whatever the document is that you're submitting.
Thank you again for joining us today for an orientation to the SMU Data Arts
Oh,
platform.
I hope, can everybody please make sure you're muted? We can hear some sounds. Thank you.
Coordinator at SMU Data
Okay,
Arts.
let's see, there's another one about, what is an example of board adoption of CEI? Is it proof of minutes in a meeting?
Proof of board adoption can be the minutes from a meeting. So you have an item where they voted and you have it in your minutes that they voted that day and that it was unanimously approved, or that it was approved by a majority of the board. So yeah, minutes can be a proof of board adoption. Board resolution for those who aren't able to get their board to meet before the application is due, then create a board resolution, make sure it's signed by your president and the secretary, and that it shows that the board adopted that statement, policy, or plan via board resolution. Some folks have this in their bylaws. They've added this statement, policy, or plan in their bylaws. Then you can add your bylaws into the application. Highlight in the bylaws where that statement, policy, or plan is located.
Okay, you've sort of already responded to this one, but I will just to reiterate, do we use our current revenue or the revenue on our most recent funder report to determine our OGP category?
Funder report, budget size from the funder report. And it's not just current revenue, but there's a calculation to that budget size. So make sure you use that number from the budget, from the funder report.
There's one about proof of fiscal sponsorship. Is that something you want to address?
We can address that at the Q&A. Yeah,
Okay.
fiscal, you need a Model A agreement, send us your agreement. You're gonna, or not send us, but add it to your application. There is a question specifically about that. We will need to see that Model A agreement.
Okay, our fiscal year ends, oh, let's see. Our fiscal year ends in December, so we haven't completed our 2024 data arts survey yet. What years would we submit for? So you would submit
21, 22, and 23. Fiscal year 21, fiscal year 22, and fiscal year 23.
So an organization has been operating since 2021. However, this is the first year that we'll have formalized from an accounting perspective. Is there a mechanism for applying in this context?
I think I need more information, so we'd probably need to wait till Q&A to answer that question. I need more information, but I don't want to delay the presentation.
Okay.
Anything else?
I think that's about it that we haven't covered, but please, if I missed it, please ask again.
Thank you, Anne. All right, so. Oh, sorry, we didn't go through our project categories yet. We, in addition to our budget categories, have project categories. These are basically buckets that we use to categorize the requests that we're receiving. So you're going to have everyone has a different type of request. Some are very specifically for sustainability. Most of our applicants I would say the majority of these are sustainability fund requests, but there are some that are organizational capacity. There might be some artistic capacity requests in here, some accessibility requests. The OGP 4 organizations budgets over 15 million can only request funding for an accessibility project. So we'll talk through these, but just know everyone else, OGP 1, 2, 3 organizations can make a request for any type of any of these 4. And there isn't like a more competitive type of project category. It's really just what is it that your organization needs the most right now, and which of these categories kind of encapsulates what you're requesting funding for. All right. So what are these? What do we mean by sustainability? Sustainability is a request for funding that has to do with the request for support of an existing or administrative project that will help sustain the mission and goals of the organization. So examples of this would be continuing compensation and benefits for staff, ongoing costs of production supplies, equipment, or rent, continuing support for marketing, governance, or fund development activities, continuing the payment of continuing artistic programming, such as payments to artists or production staff, or continuing IT efforts like computer upgrades, software, or website improvements. Again, a lot of our organizations are applying for sustainability funding. It's very common. Organizational capacity is very similar. The difference is this is for new. The other one was for continuing. This is for new projects that will support the capacity and infrastructure of the organization. So this can be new administrative staff positions, significant IT improvements like the implementation or launching like accounting or box office software, development software, developing or implementing new plans or strategies, for example, cultural equity and inclusion initiative strategies or strategic planning or board development strategies. This could also include things like launching an individual giving program or developing a new earned income strategy, for example, something that you're going to be doing through concessions or rental activities. Then we have artistic capacity, which is organizations who are requesting funding for new projects that increase the artistic capacity of the organization. So could be additional salaries, benefits, or fees for artistic staff, commissions of new work, increased rehearsal time for performing artists, supporting exhibition costs, training opportunities for teaching artists, or new or increased employment for one or more of the positions that impact the artistic product, like the technical director, the lighting, or the costume designer. And then we have accessibility. Remember, OGP4 organizations can only request accessibility funding. This is support for new or existing projects that provide public access to arts activities and programs. These are arts education activities for youth 5 to 18, audience development activities for specific segments of the population, like low-income communities, people of color, LGBTQ, or people with disabilities, or other communities who experience barriers to arts participation. And just in general, activities that broaden, deepen, or diversify arts participation. So an example, a lot of our big museums use accessibility funding for their programs that are like a monthly free museum visit, or some of their outreach educational programming that they do to increase their reach out to audiences that they normally don't always reach. Also, a lot of it can be educational, but yeah, so these are accessibility projects. I'll stop here in case there's any questions about the project categories.
There's one. Someone is asking if an organization can submit a request for both sustainability and organizational capacity.
No, there's no way to do that in the application. It's a great question. A lot of times your project might fall under more than one of these project categories. That's okay. Just choose the one that seems the best aligned with whatever the majority of the focus of the project is. And choose that one and use that project category. The real importance is really just how do you explain what you need over the next 2 years and how that's aligned with like the project category that you selected. It's really just to kind of help the reviewer understand what is the funding supposed to be for, but it's not a big deal if like it's not an exact match, or there's, you know, that, or your project falls under more than one of these categories. It's really just, it's an internal categorization for staff to know where the funding is going.
Okay, and one other question. Would bringing on a new position that would help build accessibility for an organization be considered accessibility or organizational capacity?
I would say that's more like organizational capacity. Unless their specific focus is like an outreach or educational program, like that's all they're doing, then that would be accessibility. But I think if it's a new staff member that will be involved in some of this accessibility programming that you're doing, but they're doing other types of work, I would say probably that's more organizational capacity. Okay, anything else?
Oh, no, that's it for now.
All right, great. So we're going to move on to the Cultural Equity and Inclusion Initiative. For those of you who are new to this program, you may or may not know some of this history. For those who are returning, you know this history probably. I'm going to go through it all. In 2015, the Board of Supervisors of LA County adopted a motion to create a framework for advancing cultural equity among the region's arts and culture sector. So that initiative is kind of what started, or that motion is what started our whole initiative and our journey into this work. In 2016, the department, we used to be a commission, we were called the LA County Arts Commission, we're now a department as of 2018. So in 2016, when we were a commission, we began a public process that happened through several town halls throughout the county, where we gathered stakeholders into focus groups, into meetings, and where we did research. We actually had a staff person that did a lot of research, created a lit review, and we put an advisory committee together to inform what we could do to move forward to advance this cultural equity and inclusion values, our values and our work here in the arts in LA County. In 2017, there was a report that encapsulated, that basically supported like the understanding of the Board of Supervisors of what we thought would be the best route, what kind of recommendations came out of all those meetings, all that research. The report was released in 2018. The board adopted and asked the commission, and I think at that point we became a department, to implement some of these recommendations. One being this new requirement that OGP applicants with their application submit a board adopted statement, policy, or plan that explained kind of the alignment of the organization with this with these values. So we began implementing that in 2018. In 2019, another one of these recommendations was launched. The department began a process to put together a cultural policy, which was adopted in 2020. So in 2020, we had a cultural policy that was adopted, and then also an anti-racism, diversity, and inclusion motion was created. It's an initiative that's been adopted and has been basically informing the work of all of the agencies of the county. It's a county-wide plan that we have now begun to implement as of this year. That kind of takes what we were doing in our department on a smaller scale out to the whole county, all agencies. So we're all kind of trying to use this work as kind of a catalyst to improve educational outcomes, to provide better physical and mental health care, to increase housing and housing stability, to create more meaningful employment opportunities, and a more equitable and fair criminal justice system. So we're kind of working on this all together as a county, but just know that the Cultural Equity and Inclusion Initiative of our department we had our own recommendations and our own measurable outcomes. And one of those things was making sure that all of our grantees have a statement, policy, or plan in place that expresses the alignment of that organization with these values. So here on the table, you can see what is this requirement, right? Based on budget size, what is it that you need to make sure that you're submitting with your application? We have a FAQ web page if you need to take a look at that if you're new and you want to just kind of see what the resources are on that page. But just know for OGP 1, all those organizations with budgets under $200,000, the minimum requirement is going to be a statement. You may have more than a statement. You might have a policy or a plan. Minimum requirement is a statement, and you need to make sure you have proof of board adoption with that. For OGP 2, the minimum requirement is a policy and the proof of board adoption. OGP 3, it is a policy. A plan is encouraged, but for now it's a policy. And in prior years, it used to be a policy and a plan. So just know if you're OGP 3, you may have already submitted a plan in prior years. That's totally fine. You don't need to change the documentation you've submitted. But for those who are new and in the OGP 3 category, the minimum requirement is a policy with a plan encouraged. And then OGP 4, all the budgets over $15 million, policy and plan is required with that proof of board adoption. In these documents, we are just hoping to make sure that everyone is addressing at the very least one of 5 key areas that were lifted up in our town halls, in our research. So board of directors, what are you doing to address board of directors, staffing, audience or participants, programming, artists, creators? The goal is that these documents should reflect organizational thinking around how to achieve greater equity, inclusion, and access, not just diversity within, at the very least, one of those 5 key areas. OGP 4, you're required to give us a plan and how you're addressing all 5 of those areas. So review this list, figure out what you're required to submit. And if you need a little bit more information about what this means, what is a statement, what's a policy, what's a plan? The statement would be a brief explanation of why the organization is committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, and access, and the alignment of that commitment to the overall mission of the organization. A policy would be how that vision and commitment kind of is realized. What is it that you're doing to realize that statement? And then the plan is how are you going about this? So it's a measurable plan. It's a plan that you can kind of evaluate progress on with measurable outcomes that you can kind of annually or with every strategic plan review where were you and where you're at now? What are the benchmarks? So the plan is a little more inclusive of like organizational thinking and basically operationalizing your values. So it's strongly suggested again that the plan include all 5 key areas. And again, the proof of board adoption can be board meeting minutes, a resolution signed by the board, or maybe updated bylaws. Depends on what you can kind of create, or if you've already been doing this, you're really just telling us you're reusing what you've submitted in the past, unless you have a renewed document. So again, returning folks, you can reuse what you've submitted in the past. Anybody that's new, you need to make sure you have those documents in place to submit with your application. Here is a checklist for going about addressing this requirement in case you're new to this. Okay, we have our FAQ page, our web page where we have a toolkit and some links that might be helpful. We have the report on that page, so you can review that report that was created in 2017. And then we also have a free workshop that we've been hosting for our applicants. Every year we do this twice a year in the fall during our application period. We've already had one on August 23rd. We had a full house. It was 40 people on that call, on that Zoom meeting. We're doing one more this Friday. If you're interested, definitely make sure you RSVP for that. I think we still have some spaces left. And that webinar is hosted by Diane Burby of Aspire Group. She's been doing this since the beginning with us, and we're really grateful for her partnership. So yeah, this is free, the ability to attend a free webinar with a consultant that may support your learning here and the ability for you to develop a statement, policy, or plan to submit with your application. Of course, this is more than just submitting a grant requirement, but for those who may need some extra help, we do recommend attending this. And if you have some board members, definitely trying to get some board members to attend. It's really helpful. I'll stop here in case there's questions.
I don't think there's anything really new other than someone asking for follow-up materials. Oh, let's see. No, I think that's it.
Okay, perfect. Yes, we will send this PowerPoint, which has a bunch of links on it. We'll be sending this out after the meeting. So you'll have all of this in the PowerPoint with the links that you'll need. All right, so we'll move on to artistic documentation. We have 14 disciplines. We ask that every applicant select the discipline that applies to your organization. And then depending on what that is, which one you choose, you have a certain type of artistic documentation that needs to be submitted with the application. So in general, I would say a lot of times folks will submit video or images. Some folks will be providing a PowerPoint slideshow. Some may do a slideshow on like a PDF. Just know if you're doing images, it should be on a slideshow. It shouldn't just be one or two single images. It should be a slideshow of images. If you can provide context, that's really helpful so that whoever is reviewing your application can kind of see what is it that you're sending? Like, what is the description? How do you describe what you're submitting for review? And all this information is in your guidelines so that you can read more about what the requirements are. But just, as a reminder, this is your chance to impress the reviewers by showing them the quality of the work that you're providing for your participants, for your audiences. So take the time to really think about what would best represent your organization, your community, in the samples that you provide. They should be relevant to the work that you're doing now. They should be relevant to, if possible, the request, whatever you're requesting funding for. If you can add, images of audiences, that's really helpful. It's to kind of help engage and inform the reviewer. So as much as you can, whatever you do, try to make sure that it's doing that to the best of your ability. And then just make sure, I know this is difficult because with COVID, we've had some closures and it's been difficult for folks to document the work that's been happening, but really try to encourage that the samples that you provide of the artistic documentation are not too old. We want them to be recent as possible. I would say anything older than 3 years might be too old. So anything recent, I would say, should be what you use. All right. And I usually try to support applicants by showing some examples of things that folks have used or samples that folks have used. Oh, and just know hyperlinks are allowed. So if you have like YouTube, Vimeo, maybe you have like a web page on your website, you can use those hyperlinks as artistic documentation. So I'm going to set up here. Hopefully I can get this set up okay. I'm going to show you some examples of artistic documentation that we've seen in the past. I'm going to stop my sharing and share 2 samples. Okay, so here's one. This is a sample that was submitted by San Pedro Waterfront Arts District. What I liked about this sample, and I think is really great, is that it's really well organized. It's got captions, you're seeing dates, you're seeing who was part of this event that they're showing you. The layout is really simple and easy to kind of see. And they didn't bombard you with a lot of information. It's, you know, it's what is the event, what date, who was part of it. And you can see some folks in these samples. It looks like they're having fun. The quality of their work looks really beautiful. You can see the variety of the programming that they're doing at this organization. For those of you who cannot submit a video, this is a really great alternative. Okay. Then I'll show you a video. Hopefully this works. Sometimes the video thing can get a little tricky. This is a video that was submitted by an organization, one of our grantees, Rhythm Arts Alliance. They described this video as a showcase of their dance and drum workshops at West Athens Park with youth. This video showcases the work of Johanna Blunt's work with the youth that they serve.
During the summer of 2018, we brought our program to Athens Park State. We worked with youth ages 7 to 12 twice a week for 2 months, and also participated in their Parks After Dark program. During the summer, we taught a traditional rhythm called kuki. The youth learned how to play this rhythm, how to dance to it, and how to sing the song that accompanies it. How do you feel after drawing together? My name is Katie. And how do you feel after drum and dance class? I feel happy.
Alrighty, so it's just a brief to show you the quality. It's not like the most beautiful, high quality, like HD video, but it really does a great job. You get to hear from the participants. You can see that the kids are having fun. You can see the skills of this teaching artist who's working with these youth. And you kind of get to hear a little bit about where they're working, how they do the programming that they're doing. So I thought it would be a good way to show you a video that somebody put together on a small budget that works really well. All right. Okay. Any questions about the artistic documentation?
None specifically that I saw.
Okay. Alrighty, so we'll move on to arts education requirements. So for those organizations on the call who are providing arts education programming, there's a couple questions you're going to see that you'll be addressing in the application. This is on the guidelines again. You're going to see, we're going to ask, for example, what type of arts education programming are you doing? We categorize it into 3 different buckets. So there's the organizations who are doing in-school programming. So services delivered as part of a child's school day in or off the school campus. And these are like in-school experiences, off-site experiences in partnership with the school, maybe museum tours, maybe artist residencies, field trips, or presentations during the school day. And then there's organizations that are doing out of school or extended learning programs, which would be kind of programming intended for enrollees of a respective school, but not provided during the school day or in partnership with that school. And then there's the community-based programming. These are services provided to children or youth or their families outside of school property and not in partnership with any particular educational institution. You might be doing one very specifically, you might be doing more than one. So the question will ask you, what type of programming are you doing? And then you'll have some additional information you'll want to provide. So it would be things like what are the skills of the team that's working with the youth? How do they fulfill the objectives of the program? You might want to add a copy of the curriculum that's being used for the program. And if you do that, try to make sure that you align that curriculum as much as possible with the visual and performing arts standards of the state or any other standards that you might be using. And so we put a link here to those content standards, curriculum standards for you all in case you need that. For those organizations who are applying under arts ed as the discipline, just know your application will be reviewed by arts education professionals. So all of our applications are reviewed by discipline. And so we will have teaching artists or folks from organizations very similar. It's a peer review, and they will be reviewing the application. All right. I'll move into the 11. This is the newest piece of the application. This is a new requirement that is being implemented this year. Basically, what we're doing is we're trying to explain what is the requirement, why is it required, and how, and we're supporting organizations so that you have all the information you need to get this done. So what is the requirement? The requirement is a form. It's a form that you're going to fill out in our application. The form is going to ask you for information about contributions made by paid staff or paid board members to any county officials. In most cases, this will not apply, and you'll just probably be saying no, no, no in that form. In where you do have situations where you may have a board member or a staff member who has made contributions to a county official, you'll want to report what those contributions were. So connect with your staff and board members, figure out whether or not you need to collect this financial contributions information before you start the application so that you have that info. For Model A fiscally sponsored organizations, you're collecting this information from the fiscal sponsor as well. So we'll connect with them early on. Compile this information so that you have it to complete at the time of application. And then fill out the form to the best of your ability, providing all the information that's requested. We have some informational sessions that we have organized for you all. Our administrative deputy will be hosting these. And we have a website, a web page on our website where you can read more. We can't really give advice. So what we can do is give you a phone number and an email address where you can ask very specific questions about this new requirement. And so we've provided that phone number and that email here for you in case you need to make that call and ask, very specific questions about your situation. We'll be recording our information sessions, so we'll share out that recording in case you want to watch that later, or if you want to actually attend an informational session, you can do that, sign up. When we send out this the PDF of this PowerPoint, you'll have the ability to sign up by using this link here on the screen. Just an important note for everyone to know, we are going to be making sure as staff that this information is complete and that you've completed this in your application, but it does not affect your panel score or any eligibility to receive funding. It's really just making sure it's a compliance thing, that we have this form from you, and that it's filled out accurately. We'll check that off as one of the requirements of the application. Panels will not have any access to this form. It will be hidden during panel review. Okay. Any questions about this requirement?
Yes, there are a few questions. If are we asking about contributions that are from the all time spent on the board or just to the 2 years?
Oh, contributions over the last 12 months.
12 months, okay. And does any county official mean supervisor specifically, or what does?
All county officials, including staff.
Okay. And I think there was a follow-up there. Yes, same sort of question. So more than just supervisors, it's all staff. Okay, and then what about financial contributions only? Sometimes officials will ask for services like performances. How is that addressed?
I can't answer that question. I think you might want to call this 1-800 number and ask that question. I'm not absolutely sure I can answer that.
And that's all now.
Okay. Alrighty, so that's just some new information. Hopefully this website and this information session is helpful for that person that asked about performances at events. May want to go to this information session and ask that question. Otherwise, if you can't do that, that's okay. Maybe use that email address to ask the question or the 1-800 number. All right. Any other questions about anything? This is your time to shine.
Not that I've seen, I may have missed some up further in the thread. I don't know if
Okay.
we want to open.
If maybe we can have folks raise their hand if they have a question, and then Anne, you can kind of unmute them as you're seeing hands raised. See a hand. Go ahead, Tomoko, you can go off mute.
Okay, so I don't want to take up everybody's time for my specific question, but we are new applicant, and our organization has been operating the last 4 years, and so what I'm applying for is everything new. So my question is about the category. So would it fit into artistic, number 3 of artistic capacity?
It depends on how specific your request is. Small budget organizations, I think a lot of times you're requesting for funding for like somebody's to pay a salary or to pay an artist that you're working with. Depending on what that is, or if it's very broad, you're just asking for general support of everything you're doing. You do need to kind of scale it into a 2-year project. So kind of chunk it into, like, you want to support everything that you're doing, but what is it that you can do realistically over 2 years with a certain amount of money? So you need to kind of think through that, right? You don't have unlimited funding from us. You have a certain amount. Figure out, what does that request amount look like? What can you do with that amount of money? And then once you figure that out and it makes sense for 2 years, this is what you're doing, then choose your project category. So I would say don't choose the category first. First, figure out your request information, the details. What are you spending the money on? Then choose your project category after you figure that out.
Okay, I think our priority will be for artists.
Yeah, if it's artists and you know for sure it's going to be artist payments, then probably artistic capacity is going to be your category.
Well,
Yeah, just kind of
okay.
depending. Yeah, depending on like some of those details.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I'm the next one.
Oh, go ahead.
So our organization was fiscally sponsored through from 2021 through just this year. We've received our nonprofit status. So we, for example, don't have a 990 from last year because we were fiscally sponsored. But when we're applying this year, we're applying as our own nonprofit. How would you want us to handle that documentation? Because we're in this like teenager in between stage of things.
Yeah, that's difficult. So you have to have a 990 for the organization that whoever the applicant is has to have a 990. So if you're not applying with the fiscal sponsor, you need to wait till you have that 990 ready to apply.
I see. Okay, so okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Susan Vale. I'm on the board of the American Cinema Editors, and we have several different education and mentoring and diversity programs for not just our membership, but for students, both locally and nationally. We are a 501c3, and I think we also have a foundation component as well. And we just need to kind of build out our capacity because our events are becoming really popular, and we want to be able to make the audience bigger. So I just wanted to make sure that sort of fell under the umbrella of arts education, because it's not like a curriculum for high school, you know, or elementary age. It's more college and, you know, young adult, I'd say, or new professionals.
That's a great question. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
And then also just I just am not familiar with what the fiscal sponsorship means. Like who it just made I'm new to the organizational stuff. So.
Okay. Okay. So number one, the first question about what type of what the discipline would be. I would say that's actually art service.
Okay.
Look through our guidelines. We have a whole section on arts service.
Okay.
For an example, we have certain organizations. It's not that many that are doing art service, but those organizations who are doing art service are creating programs that support the professional development and skills and capacity of artists or other types of cultural workers. So that might be the best discipline.
That sounds perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, I would look into that. Arts education for us specifically, we're referring to programming for 5 to 18-year-olds. So that probably wouldn't be the right mix for you. The right match for you.
Okay. Yeah. And then do you mind explaining a little bit about the fiscal sponsorship? Yeah,
yes.
I just didn't understand.
Yes. So there are organizations who have been doing work in communities without the full on approval of the IRS to do work as a nonprofit organization. So when you do have that, that's the 501c3 registration. You register as a 501c3, and that means you're a charitable organization. You're authorized to collect grants, to collect donations and money from the public and not have to pay taxes on that money. Some organizations are doing this, but they're doing it because they don't have the 501c3 organizational registration yet. They're doing it under the guidance of an umbrella organization, which is the fiscal sponsor. So the small organization is the fiscal receiver. The larger one is the fiscal sponsor. That organization definitely has 501c3 approval and can receive donations and has the authority to do that, does file taxes every year and kind of acts as like the legal, kind of like the legal entity or the parent organization of the smaller organization. There's
I understand,
different
like the C
agreements.
Foundation.
Yeah, there's different ways you can do this. There's Model A, Model C. There's a lot of different types. The ones that can receive funding from us are the Model A comprehensive fiscal sponsorships, and those are organizations where the agreement is that the parent organization is the legal kind of the basically owns the smaller organization. The employees of the smaller organization are employees of that larger organization. They file taxes. They have to report out on the grants of the smaller organizations. And they kind of take all the risks. And then they also do a lot of the administrative back end insurance stuff, accounting stuff. That parent organization is responsible for that. So those are Model A fiscally sponsored organizations. The other type, for example, the Model C, very, very common one is where there's an agreement between an organization or an artist and another in a nonprofit, where that nonprofit can receive a grant, give that money to the artist or organization for them to do a project. But it's not a comprehensive agreement. It's really just like an agreement for specifically for that grant. We don't allow those types of organizations to receive funding through this program. It has to be Model A comprehensive agreement. Thank you for asking that. I see another hand up. ST.
Yes.
Katie?
My name is Katie Travers with ST Forward, and I had two questions. The first question is, you had emphasized that you didn't want anything going back before 2022, but then you said that for people whose fiscal year didn't end until 2020, didn't end until December, that we could submit 2021. And I just wanted to verify that that is in fact the case, that if our fiscal year does not end until December, that we can submit through Data Arts, the SMU Data Arts, the 2021 data.
It's a little confusing to explain. Basically, what's happening is in Data Arts, you're putting in 3 years of data. The most recent year that you just finished, the year prior to that, and then the year prior to that. You're going backwards.
Okay.
You'll probably start from the oldest year and go to the beginning. I mean, to the oldest to the newest. The 990 is a different document. The end year of that document has to be the same as the final most recent year on the Data Arts report, the funder report. Has to be the same year. Okay. That end year should not be 2021, 2020, 2019. It has to be 2022 December or newer.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
My other question was, what's the rough percentage of organizations that apply are actually recipients then of grants?
You'll be glad to hear that we're almost at 99%. Last year, everyone who was eligible who submitted an application, out of the like 238, it was 239 applications, 238 were approved for funding. So it's very high, like 99% of folks who apply receive funding.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. It's a great question. All right, I'm not seeing anything else or hands up. I'm going to keep moving. So we're going to get now into the kind of nitty gritty of the application. I'm going to walk you through the actual grant portal, what that looks like, how you handle all the questions, how you handle the attachments. So yeah, let's talk through it. So for those who are starting off, you're going to be going to this website, www.apply-lacdac.smapply.io. That's our grant portal URL. This is where all of our requirements, all of our forms for all grant programs are located. You're gonna register for an account. Remember, if you're a grantee, like you're an employee or a staff person of a grantee, an organization that's already received funding before, don't register for a new account. Use the account information of whoever was doing the grant reporting and grant applications prior, so that you don't create a new account that you don't need, right? So we don't want multiple accounts if we don't need them. Try to, make sure it's just one account per organization. There are ways for us to transfer the information, and I'll talk through that, but just know if you're brand new, you've never done this before, you've never received a grant from our agency before, register for a new account. When you're doing that, you're gonna submit general information like your address, your FEIN number, your phone number, that you're gonna tell the portal what kind of organization you are. Are you 501c3? Are you a Model A fiscally sponsored organization? So you'll fill all of that out. And then one of the things I always say is make sure that you look at the time zone in your account, because the time zone will not default to Los Angeles time. I think it's defaulting to something else. So make sure you look in here in the account settings and update your time zone. Make sure it's LA time, Los Angeles time. And yeah, once you've done this, then you've got an account. You're going to be submitting something called an eligibility profile, which will, depending on how you answer those questions, allow you to see certain types of applications. So the ones that you would be eligible for, depending on what type of organization you are. So once you get through this, you'll see the application. You'll see this square. You know that you don't have to start and complete this all in one moment, like in 1 hour, whatever, however much time you have. You can do this in different pieces over several days. The application can be saved. You can return to it later. There are a certain number of tasks you have to get through to complete it. And you also might be working with more than one person on this, which is okay. You can have collaborators that you work with on this. So just depending on how you're filling it out, know that you can come back to it, like save and come back to it later. You would come back into the grant portal and click continue to start where you left off. This is what the dashboard looks like in this application specifically. We have our progress bar on the top left. This is telling you how much of the application is complete. The review button can be used to see everything that you've currently completed. And the submit button will not allow you to click into, you won't be able to submit or click the submit button until all of the tasks on the right side are checked with a green check. So you're going to do each of the tasks. You don't have to complete them in the order you're seeing them. The only requirement is, though, that you won't be able to get into the project revenue or project expense tables until you've completed task 2, budget and project, because it automatically fills in totals into the project revenue and expenses. So you're completing each of these pieces, making sure you download everything you've submitted by downloading and saving a copy. And then once you're done with that, you click submit on the submit button. Some tips here. We always try to remind everybody to start with a Word doc or some kind of text document, so that you know how many characters you have in your responses for those narrative responses, so that you don't run out of space as you're trying to type in the responses to the questions. We do have character limits that you'll see in each of the questions. So make sure you're using a text or a Word document to count how many characters you've used. Try to start early if possible and start with those data arts reports, because those can be lengthy and take some time. In the narrative questions, your responses, you're really just providing like a summary, a very succinct summary about the organization. You're giving the reviewer a summary of the way that the organization was put together, what the mission of that organization was, the history, the evolution, the goals of the organization, what long-term vision you have, what you're trying to do to accomplish your mission. Try to avoid hyperbole so that the information is clear and concise, and the reviewer can really just understand like the general information that you're giving them. Try not to use too much marketing information. Really, it's about the meaningful work that you're doing, how you're doing it, who's involved, and why, and then where you want to be in the next 2 years. Connect those dots for them, tie it all back to what your mission is. You can use bullet points, you can use outline format, that's always great. Remember, these reviewers are reviewing, in some cases, like over 20 applications, and these applications are lengthy, so make it as easy as possible for them to get the information they need. These are some of the questions you're going to be, or information you're going to be providing them. So mission, history, programming, planning and leadership, community and core audience, information about your artistic engagement and quality. There are some cultural equity and inclusion questions under planning and leadership and community and core audience. So remember to think through those pieces as well. You'll want to provide details about any specific programming, leadership, engagement strategies that you've implemented to respond to the need for diversity, equity, and inclusion in the arts. You'll want to discuss what processes you have in place, and if in those cases where there's a larger budget, what is your plan and how are you measuring your success? We did 2 years ago streamline the application a little bit so that those organizations who are OGP 1 budget category, project category sustainability can provide project proposal information here under organizational narrative, and then skip some questions later. All right. Under organizational narrative for community and core audience, you will be providing details about participants and audience members. So geography, where are they coming from? Some of the demographics, some economic characteristics, cultural characteristics. Want to see some very specific as possible information about the communities that you serve. How are you addressing any target audiences that you are trying to reach that you've never reached before? So everyone answers these questions differently. Provide as much detail as you can to be able to allow the reader or the reviewer to understand why you do the work you do, who is part of it, and what connections and bridges are you creating. Here's one of the cultural equity and inclusion questions, which is about some of the external activities that you're putting together. So the question is, describe how the applicant addresses and is taking steps to integrate and reflect the values of cultural equity and inclusion in external activities like programming, audiences, community engagement, or other strategies. You're providing specific details and highlighting any progress or efforts made in the last 2 or more years. Panelists will not see your statement, policy, or plan that you're submitting. What they're going to see is the narrative responses to these questions. So they're very important. Make sure you provide enough information for them to understand your approach to this work. Okay. I'll stop here in case any other questions have come in.
This question about, does text input, does it allow for hyperlinks?
I don't know if I understood that question.
So can you in the text fields as you're filling out like the narrative history?
Oh,
Can hyperlinks be included or no?
Yeah, you can put hyperlinks in. I don't know if they'll be like links that will go to the page as they're reading. So don't depend on that, because you might put the link in, but it won't be a clickable link. It'll just be, they'll just see the URL, but they won't be able to click into it. I don't think that they can click into the link when they're reviewing the application.
I think that's it for now.
Okay, so we'll talk about budgets, the project expense. There's two budgets. One is to say how you will match, what matching funding you'll be using to match all the grant dollars, and then the expense budget, which is showing how you'll spend the money out over those 2 years. So I'm just going to go through those two budgets. We've really tried to streamline these budget tables to make them as easy to fill out as possible. It is confusing because it's a 2-year grant and you're talking about each of those years and how you'll be doing this. But just know we've tried to streamline it as much as we can. So we'll start with project revenue. In this task, you are saying, what is the amount of matching funding you will have to match every dollar of the grant? And remember, it has to be a dollar for dollar match. It can be more than $1, but it can't be less than $1. So this table here on the screen, you're seeing what is the minimum number of dollars that you need to match each year. So you'll total that up and you'll answer this question. What is the total matching revenue for year 1 and year 2? Then you'll have a text box to explain where is that money coming from. Sometimes this is earned revenue. Sometimes this is contributed revenue. Doesn't have to be another grant, doesn't have to be another new project that you're doing to create a source of income. This can be continued, maybe you're getting donations a certain amount of donations every year, and you're depending on that as a matching source of income. That's totally fine. Same thing with contributed revenue. Maybe you're earning some money from some of the programs you're doing. You can use that as a match. You don't need a new source of income. Okay, so you'll do that, you'll save, and then mark as complete. And then for the expense table, this is slightly updated for those who haven't, some of you may not have seen this before, and those who are new have never seen this. In prior years, we used to ask applicants to tell us dollar amounts that would be spent in each of these on each of these items for each of the years of the budget of the grant. We've changed that to be percentage so that you're not telling us dollar amounts, because we know you're not getting 100% of what you're requesting. And so we're trying to make it more simple so that we can understand as reviewers more or less where's the money going, right? A lot of times this is all artistic salaries, might all be general operating. Just tell us like more or less what percentage of the funding is going where and at the bottom. And so you'll put notes in if you need to put notes in on the right column. And then at the bottom, you'll make sure that each year the total is 100, right? Because you're showing us like money is going here, here, and here for 100% of the grants. Same thing. So you're doing that year 1, and then you're doing that in year 2. You'll explain anything that needs to be explained under the text box. And if you have any issues with any of this, just please feel free to email us at grants@arts.lacounty.gov. Sometimes the tables can be a little wonky, can be glitchy. Just, keep us posted if you need help. All right, review criteria. Our reviewers use review criteria to score the applications and provide feedback on what they're reviewing. So this is in the guidelines. You can read all the details about each of these 5 review categories. There's 5. They total out to 100 maximum points that you can receive on your application, and you can see the maximum number per category here on the right side. Each question is linked to one or more of these criteria. So you'll see that in the application, question 1 linked to criterion 1 and criterion 5. So you can see kind of how the points match up with what you're submitting and how the scores line up with that. Okay, so criterion 1, that's the artistic quality. They're looking at your artistic samples, they're looking at your narrative to hear a little bit more about your mission, about the artistic engagement and quality of the programming. That's up to 35 points there. That's the largest proportion of that score. Criterion 2, this is organizational readiness, management capacity, managerial excellence, depending on your budget size, up to 15 points there. Criterion 3, quality of project plan, up to 20 points there. Criterion 4, quality of project evaluation, up to 5 points there. And then the last one is response to community need, relationship with community, or defined address community need, up to 25 points. Remember, the panelists are your peers. They'll have a sense of what high quality work looks, feels, and sounds like in the discipline that you're applying under. And they'll want to know what it takes to achieve that level of work, both administratively and artistically. So give them that information and help them understand how you're going about that. Some of these links are helpful for you. So the guidelines, the sample application that shows you every question on the application, and the application instructions are going to be found here on this webpage. Go there, download those docs. They'll be helpful as a guide. Read through the guidelines. Remember, we have some updates. I want to make sure you've seen those guidelines. When you start an account to apply, keep your passwords accessible in case you have somebody else that will be working on this with you, or just so for the future, in case you receive a grant, you can go back into the grant portal and submit reports, submit requirements. You want to make sure you have those passwords. And then I always remind folks to download your submission. You're going to need to look back at it. Especially if you receive funding, you'll need to look back at it. We have a deadline of October